Hello, boys and girls. Today's story is a little bit longer, and it's one that Miss Garrison read during chapel. Miss Garrison and I both love Max Lucado's stories, and this is one by Max Lucado called Best of All. Look at the picture there. You see the gentleman up on the ladder trying to hang a banner across the street. "Higher on the right, higher on the right," demanded the mayor. There was no patience in his voice. Chip, the Wemmick, lifting the banner, stretched as high as he could and pounded the nail into the pole. Better? He had hardly asked the question when his ladder began to sway, first to one side, then to the next. Crash! Chip grabbed the nail he had just hammered and held on. "Perfect," declared the mayor. "Just perfect." As Wemmicks ran to the rescue of the dangling worker, the mayor's wife read aloud words stretched over the street. "Wemmicksville welcomes Miss Bess Stovall." Oh, she clapped her hands as she spoke. What a wonderful day! What a wonderful day! Whoever would have thought that such a famous person would visit our village? You know what they say, don't you? Everyone leaned forward. When it comes to Wemmicks, she's the best of all. Punchinello and Lucia were near enough to overhear her words. Like the rest of the townspeople, they were wooden Wemmicks made by Eli, the Wemmick maker. Unlike the rest of the village, they were puzzled. "Tell me again," Punchinella asked the mayor's wife. "Why is she so famous?" "Well, because everyone knows her." "But why does everyone know her?" "Because she's famous." And here's the banner. "But why is she coming to Wemmicksville?" Punch asked. The mayor's wife rolled her eyes in disgust. "Haven't you heard? She's here to choose members for the wonderful Wemmicks Club." Punchinello nodded like he understood, but he really didn't. He looked at Lucia, and she looked at him, and both shrugged their shoulders. He was just about to ask another question when the watch Wemmick on top of the hill shouted, "She's here! She's here!" Doors flew open, stores emptied, villagers rushed from all directions to the end of Main Street. Fathers lifted children to their shoulders, and short Wemmicks elbowed their way to the front of the crowd. There was much shouting and pointing and tiptoe standing until a uniformed wooden soldier, looking very official and formal, appeared at the turn in the road. With scroll in hand and bugle hanging from his neck, he marched over the Wemmick River Bridge and stopped in front of the crowd. Staring straight ahead at no one, he stood stiffly until all had hushed. Opening the scroll, he read in a loud voice, "Cut from the grandest forest, carved from the strongest tree, full of sap, only the purest. She's of the highest petty tree. So welcome ye Wemmicks to your village so small, the noblest grain from the finest lumber. She is Bess Stovall." And here's Bess Stovall. With snappy movements, he tucked the scroll under his arm and pulled the bugle to his lips. Ba-da-da-da-da-da-da! Ba-da-da-da-da-da! What the Wemmicks saw next caused a village-wide gasp. A squad of soldiers marched around the corner, shouldering a tall box with curtains. From behind him, Punchinello heard the crowd whisper, "It's her! It's her!" They gasped a second time. Let the box lean much farther, and the guest of honor would fall into the fast-flowing river. But the soldiers straightened themselves out, crossed the bridge, and came to a stop in front of the mayor. They lowered the box. The trumpet-toting, scroll-reading servant stepped forward and, after a long pause, pulled back the curtain. As Bess stepped out, the villagers stepped back. Feathers flumed out of her hat. Earrings dangled to her shoulders. Both her lips and dress were bright red. Her shoes were tall. Her nails were long. And most noticeably, a large golden letter M hung from her neck. When she snapped her fingers, a sentry handed her a white cloth. With it, she carefully wiped the M and held it up like a mirror before her face. Seeing her reflection, she adjusted her hair and smiled. Beth Stovall was pleased with herself. With eyes peering down her high nose, she held out her hand, pleased with herself. The mayor's wife looked. She elbowed her husband. "Kiss it," she said. And when he did, the visitor spoke. "Oh, what good fortune is yours that I have come your way." She smirked, her head back and hands still extended. She wanted him to kiss her hand. "Shall we get on with the greetings?" Bess asked. "Of course," answered the mayor. "Everyone in line." And one by one the citizens of Wemmicksville passed before their guest. "Yes, yes," she would reply to whatever was said to her. "Welcome to our village." "Yes, yes." "We're glad you're here." "Yes, yes." "We're honored." "Yes, yes." She was less concerned about what they said than what she saw. Occasionally she would pause and stare deeply at a Wemmick. She examined the nose of the store owner and the ear of his son. She ran a gloved thumb across the hand of the house builder and took a long look at the forehead of the painter. No one knew what she was looking for, and no one asked. Although the wife of the mayor acted as if she knew, nodding when the famous guest nodded and sighing. The shortest and longest looks were given to Punchinello and Lucia. Upon seeing Punchinello, Bess suddenly stepped back before he could touch her hand. Lifting her nose and waving, she instructed, "Go on, go on." Stunned, Punch didn't move. He just stood there, curious. "Move on," her servant repeated, so Punchinello did. Lucia started to follow him, not wanting the same treatment. Suddenly the grand visitor stopped Lucia. "My, my, what have we here?" Bess admired. Her eyes widened, and for the very first time since she began greeting Wemmicks, a smile softened her narrow face. "Such fine grain, and a nice shade. Are you maple?" Lucia didn't understand at all. "Excuse me?" She had to think before answering. "Are you made of maple?" Yes." And here she is. "Which forest do you come from?" Lucia paused and thought. It took some time to answer. "Majestic," she finally said. Majestic." Bess placed her hand over her mouth in surprise. "Oh, my dear, then you and I are of the same family." "We are?" Bess Stovall laughed. "Of course." She then leaned forward and whispered, "How nice to find someone of my roots. Stay around and we shall talk." Lucia did. Between greetings, Bess Stovall would make remarks to Lucia under her breath. "Ugh, naughty timber. Such an inferior grove." Or definitely from the wrong side of the mountain. Lucia understood none of this, but she didn't say so. After all the greetings, Bess signaled for Lucia to step near. "Tomorrow we must chat. I have something for you," she said, fingering her necklace. With that she turned left, escorted by the soldiers, followed by the mayor and his wife. Punchinello came to Lucia. "Did I do something wrong?" "I don't know." "Did you do something right?" "I don't know." "Why is she kind to some Wemmicks and rude to others?" And there she is with Lucia. "I think it has something to do with ancestry." "My what?" "What forest you came from." "What does that matter?" "I don't know." They turned and left the village. Neither one spoke. They hadn't known they were different, and now that they did, they didn't know how to feel. "I'll see you tomorrow," Punch finally said. "Yeah, sure," Lucia said. Neither one felt very happy. As the days passed, they saw each other less and less. It took Bess Stovall only a short time to select her favorite Wemmicks for the wonderful Wemmicks Club. Lucia was among them. So were the store owner, Mr. and Mrs. Mayer. Bess gave each an M to wear around their neck. "The M is for Maple. You are Maples," she explained. "Not all Wemmicks are equal. Some are common, made of pine or elm. A few are quality, cut from maple like you. Fewer still of us are from a fine family tree." She glanced at Lucia, and Lucia blushed. The other Wemmicks politely applauded. And then Bess Stovall curled her lip as if she had tasted something sour. "Some Wemmicks are willows." "Willows?" they asked. "Willow is weak wood," the maple Wemmick explained. "It bends, it bruises, it has shallow roots. No one wants to be a willow." "Do you know any?" the mayor's wife asked. "Actually, there is one right here in your village." They all leaned forward. "Your friend?" "Punchinello," Lucia asked. Everyone gasped. "I always knew he was weaker," somebody said. "Been suspecting a bad family for years," another one said. "Such a sapling," and added a third one. The rest nodded. Lucia nodded with them. From that day forward, Wemmicksville began to change. Townspeople took notice of each other's tree type. The walnuts looked down on the maples. The pines looked down on the elms. The maples looked down on everyone, and everyone looked down on poor Punchinello. Interesting. Until this lady came to town, they all loved each other. And now they all look at each other differently. Walnuts formed a club and opened several branches. Elms cut a path and named it Elm Street. Maples built a tree house and hosted M polishing parties. Everyone had a group. Everyone, that is, except Punchinello. Even Lucia ignored him. "Hi, Lucia," he would say to her. "Yes, yes," she would reply, not stopping. She was, after all, cut from the finest tree. And Punchinello, well, he was just a willow Wemmick, soft and easily bent. One day Punchinello felt especially alone. He went to the pine picnic, but no one sat by him. The walnuts were playing games, but no one threw him the ball. He even tried to go to the maple party, but the sign on the door said, "Royal tree only." Punchinello was very sad. He went for a walk and sat down by the river where the willow trees grow. "Why did I have to be a willow?" he said to no one at all. "What would you rather have been?" The sound of the voice startled Punchinello. He turned and saw Eli, his maker. Maple? Eli continued. Would you rather be made of maple? Punchinello didn't answer. Both sad and embarrassed, he lowered his head. Eli walked over and lifted Punch's chin with his finger. Other Wemmicks are better, Punchinello told him. Who says? Everyone. Eli sighed and shook his head. Come here. And the two walked over to a willow tree and stopped. Punchinello, who do you think knows more, the Wemmicks or the Wemmick maker? Punchinello smiled softly. The maker. Of course I do. Do you think I knew what I was doing when I made you? The look in Eli's eyes convinced Punchinello that he was about to hear something important. You are special, my child. You are the way you are because I made you that way. You chose my forest? Yes. You chose my wood? Yes. Willow is just as special as maple? Yes. And there's Eli, the Wemmick maker, and little Punchinello next to him. Who do you think Eli is supposed to remind us of? I hope you think he's supposed to remind us of God, because God is the maker who made all of us special. Why do the others treat me like I am not special? Here is someone you can ask. Hi, Punch. This time the voice was Lucia's. Punch turned. I'm sorry, she said. I've been listening too much to them and not enough to Eli. Punchinello shrugged. He noticed that she was not wearing her M necklace. That's okay. Both smiled. Want to go back to the village, she asked. Today's the big send-off for Bess Stovall. Yes, I'd like that. The two said goodbye to Eli and walked towards Wemmicksville. Many Wemmicks turned when they entered the village. More than one whispered and pointed as the Maple Wemmick and the Willow Wemmick walked side by side. But Punchinello and Lucia didn't care. They were glad to be friends again. All of Wemmicksville turned out to say goodbye to Miss Bess Stovall. She stepped into her box and signaled that she was ready to go. Her soldier escorts marched proudly before her. Her buglers sounded the farewell. Wemmicks lined up on either side of the river to watch. New members of the wonderful Wemmicks Club wore their club T-shirts with pride. Crossing the bridge, the honored guest waved her gold medallion at the crowd. Farewell, lowly Wemmicks. Perhaps someday I'll honor you again with my presence, she said. Bess Stovall leaned out the window of her special box so that everyone could see her. And as she did, she leaned forward a bit too much and began falling. Her tumble stopped when her medallion, which is a medal, chain caught on the bridge. When it snapped in half, she grabbed one end and held on, the river roaring beneath her. Help her, the mayor's wife shouted. Help her, save her, someone yelled. But no one can reach her, said an onlooker. I can't hold on much longer. Soldiers tried, Wemmicks tried, no success. They were too stiff to bend underneath the bridge. Let me try, shouted Punchinello. I'm made of lumber. Not waiting for an answer, he ran to the edge of the bridge and sat with his back to the river. Grab my legs. And when the soldiers did, he leaned back, bent over double, and twisted around until he was hanging upside down. Instantly, he could see the wide-eyed Wemmick. She was clinging to the chain, her feet pulled by the river. Can you see him there? I'm coming, he shouted. Then, to the amazement of everyone, he bent back, 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 until he was under the bridge, reading for desperate Bess. "Take my hand," he offered. This time she didn't care what kind of wood she touched. She grabbed his hand and held on. "You must let go of the chain, Punch," she said. Bess Stovall obeyed the little Wemmick, letting go of her precious medallion, and watching it fall into the river below. Punchinello swung forward, pulling Bess high enough to be grabbed by the soldiers. For several moments no one spoke. Then from the back of the maple Wemmicks walked up to Punch, one of them. He removed his M from its chain, turned it upside down, turning it into a W. Hanging the W around Punchinello's neck, he added, "Punchinello, you are the Wemmick of the day." One by one, the maple Wemmicks removed their M's, placing them on the ground near Punchinello. Soon there was a small pile of medallions. The Wemmicks started back toward town. The last thing anyone could remember about Miss Bess Stovall was seeing the majestic maple down by the river, searching all alone for her precious gold medallion. As for the villagers, they quit talking about ancestries and decided to just be Wemmicks again. And Punchinello? He had a new job in town. "Say, Punch," a new Wemmick friend asked, "there's a ball stuck in my chimney. Any chance you could reach it?" And when Punch did, he looked up the hill. Eli was watching from the porch. Punch waved, and his maker smiled. And that's the story, Best of All, by Max Lucado. A story about being what God has made us to be, not about how we look. Okay, dear boys and girls, I will see you in another book.